June 28th, 2025. Well, the year is getting pretty close to being half over, huh? And any rate, big things coming up here is, of course, we're now fighting around about the big, beautiful bill, the Reconciliation Act that contains essentially the bulk of the Trump legislative agenda. So that's the big topic. And of course, we've had a lot going on too. The aftermath of the B-2 strike on Iran, and the Democrat reaction to it, and everything else that's going on in that. So those are the kind of topics I want to hit here on this video. But let's start off with the big beautiful bill. Obviously, there's been some real problems between the House version, which the budget hawks of the House don't think goes far enough, and the Senate version, which is running into a big problem both between senators that have different opinions and the Senate parliamentarian who apparently is imposing what's called the Byrd rule on it and cutting out various parts, which has led to some other issues. And because that is a problem, since we have to use reconciliation, which is a law passed, I think, in 1973, I think sponsored by Senator Byrd of West Virginia, and certain other interesting organizational associations we don't get into here. and anyhow, and this has certain rules, but what it allows you is to pass it with a simple majority vote. So if we can get a majority of one in the House and get 50-50 in the Senate plus Vice President Vance, we can pass it. Otherwise, we need to go through the 60-vote filibuster threshold, which would make it far more difficult. And so that's kind of the situation we're looking at here. I know some of the things that got struck were kind of weird. It was stuff about, as I understand it, was Medicaid benefits for illegal aliens, and another thing was some transgender surgeries, and I'm not sure what's going on here with that. One of the issues had to do with potentially some rules that were involved in the Medicaid, the Social Security Act. One of the things that's fallen by the wayside in our ongoing discussion of tax cuts, the three that were promised, as we well know, was the tax cut on the tips, you know, the one for overtime, which I personally don't quite see that one, but I mean, after all, I mean, if you're being paid time and a half, or I think even double time on Sundays, right? And there's a labor law on that. Now we're talking about people that are under the labor law. If you're exempt from the labor law, it's a so-called salaried exempt category. The way you're treated there is completely different, and you may or may not get something. You might get comp time, you might get overtime, or you might get nothing, depending on what the company wants to do, basically, and what they think they have to do. But nonetheless, hey, it's something that definitely would say that it's the Democrats can't say it's for the rich, right? And then finally was Social Security, which has gone to the wayside because supposed reconciliation wouldn't allow you to do something to Social Security, which just because Social Security word is involved, I'm not sure. I mean, it's an income tax issue, isn't it? But they've replaced it with a $4,000, at least the House version has, with a $4,000 deduction, which, depending on your tax rate, varies on how much money you would get back. If you're in the 22% top bracket, well, you can see what you'd get there, right? I mean, that would be, what would it be? Four, 880 or something like that. I think it is. So anyway, point is, but if you're in a higher bracket, like the 37% bracket, you get more, which seems to me to be missing what you're trying to do with that. I think a credit would make more sense. But anyhow, that's kind of, they're haggling about those kind of things, and a variety of other spending cuts. And there's a lot of fear on what they're doing with Medicare and particularly Medicaid. I think Medicare is pretty much intact, but Medicaid, a lot of the even Republican areas are worried that rural hospitals will be adversely affected, and so we'll see how we get going. But the bottom line is that the Republicans have to get this thing passed because it contains the extension of the tax cut rates that were done during the Trump's first term, and it includes the border security package. And those two things are just essential to the agenda. And if the tax cuts don't get through, I can assure you they'll be hell to pay next year. If you like these videos, please give me a like, subscribe, and you can click the bell for notifications. Or you can also follow me on Rumble if you're subscribed to that, and you just happen to pick this up on a social media account. So anyhow, so that's kind of the way I see it, and we'll see how that goes. I know last I'd heard, I haven't really checked in the last couple of hours at the time I'm recording this, but I understand that the preliminary vote, the cloture vote to begin debate, was delayed because they're still haggling over the text of the bill and trying to put something that's complicated together in this time frame. And they always are rushing to do things at the end. I'm a little bit amazed that they're having that much trouble with the bird rule, because I would think that would have been, they'd have pretty well known what would fly and what wouldn't. I don't. There are calls have been made to fire the parliamentarian, which I guess they could do. However, that would be kind of a controversial move at this point. If they were going to fire her, they should have fired her when the Republicans took control of the Senate, I think. In other words, doing it at this late thing would look very partisan, and of course would set another precedent for the Democrats to do something. And what they'd like to do is to totally eliminate the filibuster and do some things that I think most conservatives would really not want. Like, for instance, ban voter ID. Not require it, ban it. And some really tough gun control measures, and who knows what else. I mean, all kind of bad stuff. Free transgender surgeries. I mean, who knows what they would do if they didn't have a filibuster, right? So there are reasons to respect these rules, even if they seem arcane and ridiculous. And then one of the things I did run into was they were saying that all this requires the modification of some title of a Social Security Act from a really moderate Republican House member. But I was saying the word Social Security Act is in that, and I think that's what the Byrd rule prevents changes to, I think. And maybe that's why we're also not getting tax-free Social Security. For the Social Security part of it. Like it used to be before, I guess, the Gettr bill in the 1980s, if you go back that far, know some of these things. All this was done to make Social Security more solvent, and perhaps on paper, the income taxes on Social Security are attributed to the trust fund on paper. Perhaps, I don't know. And if that's the case, that's probably why that's a sticky issue. But the main thing I'm looking at is just the basic tax rates that were put in place back in 17, and I think took effect in 18, I believe. So anyhow, we can encourage our senators. If we have a wayward senator like the people in Wisconsin and the people in Kentucky and maybe some of these other states where people are fighting this thing, send them an email or give them a phone call and tell them to get off the dime and pass this bill. We need it. Well, there are other things that can be done later. We could do rescission bills to carve out some of the spending that we would like to still carve out. We don't have to put it in this bill. And the rescission bills are also passed with a simple majority vote, too. And I noticed the one that was supposed to codify certain things, I think, was having some trouble in the Senate also. So we'll see how that goes. All right, so that's kind of that. The other thing I want to get into here then is like I mentioned at the beginning, is the aftermath of the bombing of the nuclear sites in Iraq. I noticed this has really set off a lot of people. There was some attempt by certain people, including some libertarian-oriented Republican members, but mostly all Democrats, to put some restriction on Trump's ability to do things with Iran, even though the conflict has kind of ended. It looks like the ceasefire is holding, unlike what a lot of people were predicting early on. And so I think that was kind of uncalled for. And it looks like, in fact, in my opinion, that Trump has pulled out a fairly masterful operation here, really. He managed to basically destroy, I think, the Iranian nuclear weapons program. And at the same time, Israel was able to greatly degrade the Revolutionary Guard Corps, the research, the scientific team behind the program, and a lot of members of their military. And although the Ayatollah was safe in his bunker, uh, apparently thanks to Trump's prohibition for the moment, and um, and so um, it looks like we've set the thing back, I think, for quite a while, probably years, if at all. Though they might try to restart it, but it takes some time to rebuild all this, I think. At least that's my opinion. I know there's that preliminary report, but even there, you have to remember that the 7 month part of the report, which was leaked, is the most pessimistic outcome. There's the other one, which they didn't say what it was, but I think that is years. And then, so the mean would be somewhere in between there. The most likely would be between there. So I think this is a attempt to undermine the administration and prevent them from getting credit. I mean, the Democrats are flat out, opposing this, which is kind of the usual thing. I mean, they're looking for any vehicle, partisan vehicle, to attack the administration on, regardless of what he does. And if he cured a major disease, they would probably condemn it because it would put doctors out of work or something. I mean, this is a whole different issue, and but I think that there's been some damage to Israel. There's been a lot of Iranian missile strikes, but from what I can see, their defense system worked pretty well when you consider what it is. And I think, again, I'm hearing this, it didn't work. I think it was pretty effective. I've heard that there was one commentator suggests there was about 50 successful strikes out of perhaps about 500 total missiles. We'll get the real numbers later. If so, that's around 90%. Now, they may not have counted hits that went through, that were allowed to go through by what's a technique called preferential defense, where when you see something that's heading to an empty field or something, or missing the country and going into the ocean or something like that, you don't shoot an interceptor at it. You just let it fall. So that there may be more that, but there are significant damages. The stock exchange was blown up. A refinery was hit. I don't know if it's destroyed or just put out of action for a while. A power station, some apartments, a lot of residential buildings, and so forth. So, we'll probably get a better idea of the damage level. But on the other hand, a lot of the military assets of the Iranians were destroyed as well: aircraft and missile launchers, missiles, probably production facilities, all that sort of thing. So overall, I think it was an exchange favorable to Israel, and the nuclear issue probably is kicked down the road for a while. And the good news is Trump was able to exit with a ceasefire after 12 days or whatever it is, and it seems to be holding. So it looks like we won't be going to war with Iran, and there's no need for a declaration of anything. And so we'll see how that all plays out. So that's kind of the thrust of the week here, and we'll see what happens. The next thing that's coming up will be, after the reconciliation bill, if we get that through, will be the actual fiscal 2026 budget. And that'll be interesting because that will almost certainly have to go through a 60-vote threshold in the Senate. And so I'm looking for, probably this will lead to a reconciliation bill, probably, and it looks to me like a lot of money, a lot of the cuts that were in the original budget proposal, some of which I think are very bad, actually. I mean, some of the cuts to healthcare research and the space program and things of that sort, I think are short-sighted, and are also really a very small amount of the excess spending we have. This is not really the part of the spending, I think, that's been detrimental. Some of this stuff is perhaps even revenue positive to the government in the long run, Certainly space and scientific research tends to be, I think. But anyhow, we'll see how that goes. But there's likely to be that, and then there'll probably also be some attempts at, rescission bills as well, I think, later on. It'll be interesting to see it. There'll be some real battles. So anyway, that kind of wraps up this particular video, and I'll of course be posting on YouTube, this on YouTube and Rumble, and of course, as always, and also my various social media accounts listed in the description below. So this is all for now.